Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the Emergency Home Learning Summit. My guest is Angela Maiers. Angela, welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here, Steve. It's like I've been excited about it all day. So I'm thrilled to be talking with you and thrilled to be addressing our amazing community that's been with us through this whole learning summit experiment, if you will.
Terrific. Um, Angela, did you have a story of school growing up?
Yeah, I did. It was a story of perfectionism and the danger of perfectionism. It wasn't my family. I have always been a lover of learning, but I put this pressure on myself. It was my identity to, if I got an A minus, I would fall apart. And I remember getting my first B plus, and you would have thought like you would have, just given me a sentence of like jail. And I put myself in this emotional just grip of having to perform and be perfect at everything that I did. And so that put me on a path to going to medical school, which was not my passion, pursuing jobs that weren't my passion. And I think it takes an experience to shake you into reality. I think there's great advice and there's great inspiration, but it is experience that changes us. And when I was in college, I worked to put myself through college, and I worked 4 jobs, and all 4 experiences were with children and families that had challenges, from neonatal addicted neonatal drug addicted babies and helping their moms in the first 3 months of life try to get back on track healthy, to severe and profound autistic adolescents, to emotionally abused young people 8 and under. So every one of my job circumstances put me with experiences where I saw life and I saw learning and I saw hope at different levels. And I would come back alive. And thank goodness I had a college professor that recognized when I was truly alive. And it was always when I was talking about kids or I was talking about families. And so he aided me in quitting medical school and pursuing a career in teaching. And I think if I hadn't had that experience or had that person that pointed out what that experience is trying to teach me, I would have stayed on my path of perfectionism. Like, I should do this and I should do this, not what I was meant to do.
Now, was that perfectionism the result of your own temperament, or was your parents' story about school perfection?
Well, I was the only girl that was in college in my family. Both of my parents did not go to higher education. So I think there was always a high priority on education, but I'm the firstborn. And I know that's a trait of the firstborn, to be really driven and really conscious. And I always felt like I was this older person in a younger body. Like, I always felt the weight of of the world on my shoulders, and thought about things that from a very early age that elementary kids shouldn't think about and teenagers couldn't think about. And now I see that as the roots of being a change maker. I see that in young people today. It's just not something that we talk about or orient young people about: a higher purpose, a deeper purpose, a drive to see the world from a visionary or a bigger stance. We just talk about practical things. So it really wasn't until I was out of college and the internet started coming to fruition that I found my community. Even though my passion and heart were with education, entrepreneurs and startups and change makers were the people that made me say, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one that stays up at night and thinks about the world in this way. And most importantly, thinks about my part in changing the world in this way. So I think education should open that conversation up, because young people have very definitive ideas about how they see the world and what the world can be. And we need to listen to those, and we need to take those. I wrote a post, it was several years ago, and said, when kids say they want to change the world, listen to them, and don't brush it over and say, oh, you're just a kid, or you're just this, or you're just that. And so I think that's a huge part of my new education journey is I'm so calm about who I am. And I never was before, because it was always dependent on the next award or the next accolade or the next accomplishment that did not fulfill me inside. It just checked a box off for a temporary moment.
I keep thinking of the word fragile.
Mm.
Do you think students feel fragile? Do you think there's a percentage of students who just feel very fragile in the traditional environment?
I think they grow to feel fragile. I've had the benefit before COVID of working with tens of thousands of young people. I was seeing about 30,000 young people, ages 5 all the way to 15, in a change-making experience. And I have never been around such confidence, such fierceness, such determination and clarity about what their role in the world is and could be. But I invited that experience. So I don't know, in context of other experiences, I think we grow into doubting ourselves. We grow and are educated into questioning what is the path we should take. And we're nudged gently, I think, not intentionally, to a safe path, to a predictable path, to a path that fulfills boxes that might not necessarily be the boxes that we're seeking to fill. So I think that's where fragility comes in, is because we're out of congruency, if you will. Who we are and know that we wish to be is not meshing with how other people wish us to be, because it's more comfortable for them.
Give us a quick idea of what you do when you have a large group of students and you're working with them.
It's like being witness to a miracle. It is so hard to describe. I mean, we've got videos and documentation, but it really is like, I call it Genius Boot Camp because it's under the same premise of boot camp. We break each other down to the essence of our humanity. So in the first 30 minutes, they have a choice of what the expectation is and whether they can handle it. So you can ring the bell after an hour. So the only rule in Genius Boot Camp is be brave, be brave. And here's what that means. Brave is not, the opposite of brave is not cowardliness, it's comfortability. So there will be nothing comfortable about the next 24 to 48 hours. You will not hold back, you will not hesitate, you will not hide. In fact, our litmus test is if you shared your most audacious dream or idea, 5 people would laugh in your face. And if you get 5 laughs in your face, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, that will never be done, then you can bring that to the table. So it's a whole new expectation of being your full self and sharing your genius fully and fiercely with each other. So in the first hour, it's very funny, but our first exercise is called I See You. And it's all of this is based on the environment of essential needs I need to show that have been met in a very short amount of time. So so normally my groups are between 500 and I don't know, 1,000 kids, somewhere around that. K-12, they don't know each other. They haven't been mixed in the way they are. And they have to sit eye to eye and knee to knee and look at each other for 1 minute, without laughing. We model it. We talk about the awkwardness, and they think, well, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. It is so transformative, unbelievably transformative, to be seen deeply by another person. And then we walk around and they don't speak after that. And then they write on a sheet of paper how they felt. And so the things are, I felt beautiful, I felt free, I felt honored, I felt whatever. And we place that around the room and say, like, we can't make change unless we feel this way, unless we feel noticed and acknowledged and seen. And then the next exercise is called listening loudly. and we practice the act of listening, but not in the way that, I mean, normally when we speak to somebody else, we're not really listening. We're engaging to talk. We're engaging for the next phase of interaction, because that's how we're wired. So listening loudly gives each human 1 minute to speak about what matters to them most. And so, Steve, if I asked you for 1 minute, again, we're sitting eye to eye, knee to knee, what matters most to you from your deepest level, and you speak it, you speak your truth and you speak what's in your heart. And then I listen so loudly that I can repeat everything you say back to you so that you can hear literally what your heart is feeling. And it sounds like these sound like such simplistic things. I did this with a group of soldiers re-entering after combat, and one of the colonels came up afterwards and he said, you know, like, Angela, I was doubtful about this, but I literally watched the souls of soldiers change in front of me. And that's what it feels like. You can feel it in the room. You can feel the souls of people changing. And then we answer 2 questions, and we have 48 hours for these 2 questions. Based on our stories of what matters to us most, it sort of orients us to like-minded people. So like if animals matter most to you or education matters most to you, we sort of can form these surface level groups. But the deep question that drives us to action and essentialness is, what breaks your heart about that? So this isn't individuals following their passion. It's individuals following what I call heartbreak. And then we map that heartbreak. I call it compassion-driven innovation. We map that heartbreak, and it leads us to 2 things. It leads us to individuals working to manage that heartbreak right now that we can team up with, that we can leverage our collective genius, or it leads to gaps where we must stand up and we must fill that gap and be the mender of that heartbreak. And that's where all the innovation happened. It happens at the intersection of heartbreak and passion. And to get to that place with kids with a time limit, and this is just design process and thinking that we put constraints around them. You have 24 hours to figure out how to leverage the collective genius in the room and put it towards something that's bigger than yourself. And it is like, it's so hard to explain the transition that you can feel in the first hour, and to watch kids take seriously this unbroken rule to be brave. Because if there's a kid, like, we actually have monitors that go around, and if they see people holding back or hesitating or not sharing their full crazy audacious dream and idea, they'll like tap them on the shoulder. Do you need to step away for a little bit? Because only brave people can be in this room. And the one event out of 20 events that I've done that we actually had adults a part of, because this is all driven by kids, organized by kids, escalated by kids. We had 6,000 kids, and it was like a crazy time. So there were adults in it, and it was starting to fail on day 1. And so the whole district, the whole city was going to shut it down. And a group of kids came and said, the kids aren't the problem. The grownups are the problem. So if we could have permission, like this was to the mayor, this was to the superintendent, the police chief, if we could have permission to put anyone not being brave in the comfort room, and they made a comfort room. They put movies in it, they put magazines, anybody not willing to be fully brave and need to be comfortable at the moment, we'll put them in the comfort room, but we don't want repercussions. So they put 36 teachers in the comfort room, and it went beautiful, because it is a whole different environment. It's contagious when people are being fearless, and the things that they got accomplished, not just in 48 hours, but that experience changes you. And that's what, it's just making me miss it so much. I want to try to find a way to do this online, but that's what it's like. That's my get to do, like every day, knowing that the world is filled with young, visionary change makers. They're not leaders in the making. They are leading now. They're not future innovators or future world changers or future anything. They are that right now. They're just sitting there waiting to be asked for a seat at the table.
So what do you know from those experiences that would be helpful to students and parents right now who are probably not really able to gather with lots of other people,
Yeah.
but trying to
So,
figure out where to go.
right. So what I learned most, because it was the first event, which I didn't really know what was happening, where kids were actually innovating. They were getting domains, they were opening nonprofits, and all the attention sort of went on the product that resulted after this experience. And that became the focus. Like what's kids' innovation plan? What's their change making plan? And what I realized, because I started focusing on that more, is that the truly transformational part of this experience, or any experience in 30 years I've had with kids, was the act of being seen, and the act of being heard, and the act of not only knowing what your value is, but articulating your value to other people and having them add to that confirmation. And that is the part, that is the framework that I'm bringing to schools and parents, what I call the mattering framework, is that this is what defines us as human beings. We don't simply want to be seen and heard. We need to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, and to have a chance to contribute something, which is how we display our essentialness. When we aren't just gifted and born with this ability to impact, we have to have the opportunity to be able to impact. And that's what gets hidden over time. That's what diminishes over time. So I think the best thing that a parent can do, that a teacher can do, is literally be present, fully present with your child. Listen to them, deeply listen to them. You don't have to repeat back what they say, but don't listen with your ears. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they feel. My question after I've listened to somebody is, what have I learned? Not only from that person, what have I learned about that person through the act and art of listening? One of the very cool science experiments that I share is, I think it was out of the University of Illinois, did an MRI to people being listened to that have been through series of strategies and techniques, and they mapped their brains in the act of listening and being listened to. And they could not differentiate, the, the brain cannot differentiate being listened to and being loved. It is that closely related in our biology. To be listened to is an act of love. It's an act of honor. It restores dignity. And I think as parents, we don't think about children and even possibly teachers from the perspective of dignity. But it's the place where all this begins. The most dignifying thing we can do for another human being is see them through the lens of their humanness, not the lens of their grade or their age or their race or their zip code or the color of their hair. But that's where you meet them at, right at the heart. And every human needs this. I don't know why my earphones are not working. Can you hear me without my earphones?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
sorry. Yeah, I can hear you perfect. They're driving me
Good.
crazy. I hate those earbuds. So that's what I've learned, is that um, without those essential needs being met in any experience, online, offline, a giant change making experience, or folding the laundry, the core of where humans break down always stems back to feeling not listened to, feeling unseen, feeling invisible, feeling like you're not enough, feeling hopeless and helpless, stem from feeling like you don't matter.
Why do you think it is that parents and adults have a hard time listening?
Well, it's not fully our fault as human beings. We're not wired to be good listeners. We're wired for social interaction. So we are wired to respond. And it's good social etiquette to respond. It's a whole different muscle in your brain that listening demands, which is why we're so bad at it. In all respects, we want to be heard so badly that we don't listen to what other people. That's one of actually your most genius traits, is you are an extraordinary practiced listener. I'm working on that every day because I talk for a living, Listening's not it's something I have to be super conscious of and super practiced in to do it well, because that is not what my default setting is, not listening, talking.
One of my favorite questions to ask youth is, if you could reinvent school, what would you do?
Hmm.
And when I started asking that question of my own kids, I discovered that I had a temptation to correct them or to guide them that I had to actually sit on,
Yes.
that I had to be willing to allow them to go through their own progression. And that was actually required confidence on my part, that the
Yeah.
desire to interrupt and to solve came from a lack of confidence.
Yes. And because we're not used to listening to kids, we're not used to listening to each other. That's one of the techniques that we use in listening loudly, is to sit on our hands and to get something to squeeze every time we think we're going to interject, even if it's a positive interjection, like, wow, that's amazing, because automatically that sparks a connection in your brain. Well, that's just like, and this is just like, and it is such an emotional experience to watch people, especially young people, be listened to for the first time. That first hour that we're together is extremely vulnerable and extremely emotional. I've had, like I did an event in inner city LA. So we had members of gangs come into this, like really hardcore. I did an event like this with the prison systems. And so we had like hardcore, rough and tough, but this isn't an ideology, this is biology. So I believe fundamentally that being seen, being heard, being valued, being dignified with that value, all of those things are as critical to our life and our well-being as food, water, shelter, air. So you can take the most hardened, tough human being, and stick them in a room, and they might hold out a little longer, but eventually they will need to eat, they will need to sleep, they will need to have all those essential needs being met, because that you cannot deny what makes us human. And ultimately, those are the things that make the most humane environments. And so when I look at whether the environment's online or the environment's offline, those conditions have to be met. And when I ask kids, like with that study for South by Southwest, the question was, what makes you run to school? And the number one answer coming back, if somebody said my name, if a teacher or somebody in the school said my name. And I thought, that is not possible. How could you go to school and nobody say your name? It's possible, and it happens every single day, that we're not acknowledged for our humanness. We are math students or science students or, this or that. And we don't have even seconds to demonstrate those human needs.
So you've done work both in the arena of teachers and in
Mhm.
the arena of parents.
Yes.
So what advice uniquely do you feel that you could give at this moment in time?
Mm. I just did a whole parent event this week, and I had one message for every single parent out there. You are enough. Not only do you matter, and I'm not saying that to motivate you, I'm saying that as a reminder that as a caregiver, as the provider of hope and certainty and stability and health for our children, we cannot parent from a place of unworthiness. We cannot teach, we cannot parent, we cannot lead. And worthiness is a daily practice. You don't just stumble upon significance. So reminding ourselves that perfection is our enemy, presence is our superpower. And what kids need most, especially in times of chaos and uncertainty, is they need your presence, to check in with them, to look at them, to listen to them, to have moments in the day that they can lean on your whole self. You don't have to do something special for them. You don't have to do something special with them. You just need to be present when you are with them. And it doesn't even have to be for 24 hours. There are, do you know the Heath brothers, the Made to Stick guys? So their newest book is Peak Moments, and it's all about the neurological elements in the day that prioritize our moments in the day differently. Our brain actually differentiates some moments being more important than others. And the peak moments are when kids wake up and when they go to bed at night, because that's sort of the sandwich of how they process their entire day. So if you're a really busy parent, like every parent I know, and you cannot be fully present because you're working 2 jobs or you're stressed about the basic everything with your family, if you can just take 30 seconds to a minute and just be fully present with your child as they get up in the morning, and then when you greet them for the first time. Maya Angelou has this beautiful line. She was on Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, and she said, when kids, the best gift that a parent can give a child is when they come home, they see your eyes light up when they enter the room. You're not busy doing this or unpacking their backpacks. And I think that has been my unwritten lesson, starting with kindergarten, is that before school started, I stood out the door and my eyes lit up every time a kid passed. And then we did the work. And when they left, they saw my eyes and they were ready to run back to school the next day. Even if the middle of the day goes really bad and is really chaotic, which is definitely the case right now. You matter and you are enough and you have exactly what your kids need and only what they need, which is your presence.
Do parents ever struggle feeling like my child is not succeeding and thinking that the child isn't good enough?
I think that first, and I'm speaking as a parent myself, you can speak as a parent yourself. I think children let us down because we create standards for them where our standards might be different than what they strive for. So I think that's a natural thing, that children might go into a field or they might pursue something that we don't think is the best fit for their life. And we have to let them go through that. And that's super hard. That's really, really hard. But I think the default for parents is they blame themselves for everything. There's not a single parent that doesn't question themselves at the end of every day and think, did I do enough? Was I enough? Should I have done this? If I would have done this. And it is futile to think that. My kids are grown now, but I think my biggest regret as a parent was trying to be the perfect parent in front of them, to never let them see me break down or never let them see me struggle, because I didn't want them to experience pain. And I just wanted their life to be pain-free, like every parent. But it is actually in your struggle and in your pain that not only teaches us the best lessons, but it is the model that kids need to see. They need to see us get down and get right back up. They need to see us at low moments and look at the strategies and the ways and the practices that we pull ourselves together. Being human in front of my children has been the greatest relief as a parent. And I remind them, I don't promise you perfect. I'm not perfect, but here's what I can control and here's what I can promise you. When I'm with you, I will be present. And I can say that I wasn't always that way as a parent. It's like when I look back, it is deep regret because I had my computer open or my phone on. I make a conscious effort. Like my daughter called last night and I was distracted and she's like a super sleuth. Like, you're on your phone right now. I said, yes, I am. Give me 2 seconds. I'll finish this and I'll call you right back. Because like they're so now accustomed to that new standard that we have as human beings with each other, that that's really all they care about. They just want to be with me, and not for a long amount of time. Let me say that. Like my 2 grown children don't want to spend days with me. So they're good with these peak moments and then they want the moments for themselves. But our presence in those peak moments makes a huge difference, a huge difference. And so I think that hopefully um, lets us be gentler with ourselves as teachers and as parents, and lets us show ourselves compassion, that without the expectation that we're going to be perfect or things are going to go perfect, or going to handle everything in a perfect way. We're not. We're going to fail. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that we regret, but we own those and we pull ourselves back up and we come back in front of our kids and we start anew and we show them that over and over and over. And that is a great gift that we give our kids. I mean, what
Angela,
would you say, Steve?
go ahead.
What would you say to that question? Do you
I've
feel,
already,
do you feel like you're enough? I mean, do you struggle with that as a parent?
I think that it was the places where I was struggling the most personally that I was the least effective. When I had confidence, I was patient. I could help them figure it out. It became a litmus test for me. My frustration actually became the litmus test of my own self-work that needed to be done. Now that was hard. That was really hard.
Working on yourself, super hard. Here's something. I was in an event with Seth Godin this week, and one thing he said, that the idea of confidence and assuredness. And he said there are some professions that need confidence. Like if you have a pilot, navigating a flight, you better hope that he's confident or she's confident that she can land the plane. But when you're doing emotional labor, confidence is not what you should strive for. Assuredness is what you should strive for. Because confidence means that you know the outcome, that you're going to control the outcome, that you're going to predict the outcome. You have confidence that the plane is going to land on this site, on this dot, in this center between these lines. And it stops you from relishing what could happen in the moment. What is better to think about, and I think this is important as a parent, is to think of assuredness. Here's what I will assure you. You will absolutely be loved, unconditionally loved. I can assure you that you will be listened to. I can assure you, even when it's hard, I will support you in pursuing your own path to significance, even if it isn't the path that I wished you would take. I assure you, boom, boom, boom. And we can assure our kids, we can assure our significant others, we can assure people in your life that this is who I am. This is what I promise you. This is what I will always give. And that is way better than confidence, because there's a calmness in that. There's a certainty in that. In times of uncertainty, this is what I can always count on from you. And it's a lot less pressure than being confident, because confidence breeds perfection, and perfection is the enemy. It's the enemy of learning. It's the enemy of parenting. It's the enemy of being human, because it's inhuman to think we're going to be perfect.
That's the perfect place to stop. I was trying to type it. I was trying
Are
to
you
type that
sure
out as you
about
said
that,
it.
Steve? Are you sure? No, that's so true.
That's funny. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah, my pleasure.